This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
All right, now, thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, hosted by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Tate, and this morning, we're going to start right off at the top by talking about the Los Angeles Lakers. Last night, or yesterday, the Lakers actually made a trade. They actually restructured the Anthony Davis trade with New Orleans and turned it into a 3-team trade in which they included the Washington Wizards in there, in which they traded Mo Wagner, Bonga, and Jones, 3 young guys that were on their roster, to the Washington Wizards, and completed the Anthony Davis trade. The importance of this is the fact that the Lakers now have $32 million, which gives them the ability to go after another max player. So, on top of that, and on top of doing a trade that actually cleared up $32 million, LeBron James agreed to give up his number 23. He is going to go back to the number 6. So he's given up his number 23 to Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis decided to give up his $4 million trade exception. And all is right in Los Angeles. They have the cap space to go after a major free agent. It looks like LeBron James and Anthony Davis are on board with recruiting. They're both on the set of Space Jam, having a good time. So what has happened is with these moves, it gives the Lakers a lot of options. And the first option is to go after a major free agent. And when you're talking about the major free agents, you're talking about Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, or Kawhi Leonard. Klay is less of a priority because of the fact that reports are, as of Sunday, when free agency comes into play, Klay plans on, as long as Golden State is offering the max, he plans on taking it and not visiting with anyone. So you can take Klay off the board. Klay Thompson is going right back to the Golden State Warriors, which I think is a really smart thing. You keep the Splash Brothers together. You get to play with the team that you are comfortable with, that you've won some championships with. It's the right move. The question comes down to Kyrie Irving and Kawhi Leonard. All reports are reporting that it is pretty close to a done deal that Kyrie is going to go to Brooklyn. But if he doesn't go to Brooklyn, that the Lakers are his second choice, and that he has been looking into playing and going back with LeBron, which I think would be a good move on his part. I think he fits in very well with LeBron. In the past, he's won a championship. Anthony Davis is a guy that actually can create his own shot, can play solid defense. It's the perfect fit. If you're looking at winning championships, if that's a priority for Kyrie Irving, then the Lakers would be the best spot. Now, when you start thinking about Kawhi Leonard, though, Kawhi Leonard has a lot of options. Pretty much his options are stay in Toronto, go to the Lakers, go to the Clippers, where he's a Los Angeles guy, came from Los Angeles, you get to go back and play in front of your family. He could go to New York, he could go to Brooklyn. Now, when I look at Kawhi Leonard, and I know the Lakers want to go get him, the question is it a good fit for Kawhi Leonard? And when I start thinking about, it's nice to go home and play in front of your hometown fans. It's nice to go home and play in front of your hometown family. But it can also be a major drawback. When you're playing with friends and in front of friends and family, there's no place to kind of unwind. The nice thing about playing in a place like Toronto is, first off, you have an entire country that is supporting you. You're always going to be a legend. You're the greatest basketball player to ever play in Toronto. You brought them a championship where there was no shot at a championship. It seemed like that there was a championship was nowhere on the horizon for them. Kawhi Leonard goes there. There's now a championship, and you're looking around and you're saying, listen, we keep this team together, we can win another championship. But the other part about that for Kawhi Leonard is when he wants to go home, he doesn't have the pressure of everyone saying, are you going to bring us a championship? Are you going to bring us a championship? When he goes to LA to visit, it's just to visit instead of living where you work. That's the reason why when I think about Kawhi Leonard, I personally think the smart decision is to stay in Toronto. But it doesn't change the fact that the Lakers have now freed up space, and their number one priority, from what I'm hearing, is Kawhi Leonard is the priority number one, and then Kyrie Irving is priority number two. The talk since the clearing up the space, before the clearing up of the space, there was a lot of talk that D'Angelo Russell was their number one priority. I think now that they have the space available to go after Kawhi Leonard or Kyrie Irving, that D'Angelo Russell has slid down to option B. If the Lakers can't get either one of those two, then they would go after D'Angelo Russell. There's also talk that if they don't get one of those two, that they will break that $32 million up into 2 or 3 pieces and go after a much deeper team, which could be really the best way to go. I've been thinking about that when it comes to the Lakers and thinking, what is the best option for the Lakers? They have the money now. They are a primary destination. They have LeBron James. They have Anthony Davis. And you look around and you say, there's a lot of experts that say, break it up, make the team deep, go out and get the pieces that's going to fit around LeBron James and Anthony Davis. And I was originally part of that same group that was saying that. I was thinking that's the best move. But when you start thinking about teams, and I started thinking about the Miami Heat when LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh all got together, they had no players at all. They had 4 guys. And when you put together a solid team that's going to win championships, other guys will come in and fill in. So I personally now, and they were able to have not a problem filling their bench. And I don't think the Lakers will have a problem either. So if I'm the Lakers, I'm saying go after a fourth person. Their big three, go after a big four. The big three, Kyle Kuzma. First off, Kyle Kuzma is young. He's athletic. He is a future star. Very little talk has been brought up about Kyle Kuzma, but Kyle Kuzma is truly part of that big three. LeBron James, everyone knows who LeBron James is, and Anthony Davis, that big three right there is good enough to win a championship. Mark my word, they are good enough to win a championship right now. The reason why I say go and get a fourth player and spend the money and get off of the max to a Kyrie Irving, Kawhi Leonard, D'Angelo Russell type player, Kemba Walker type player, is because of this. When you look at the Golden State Warriors this last offseason, you cannot account for injuries. First off, in the league, stars win games. The top players can always win games. But when you have four top flight players and something happens like what happened with Golden State, where let's say LeBron goes down or Anthony Davis goes down. If Anthony Davis goes down, you still have Kyle Kuzma, you have LeBron James, and let's say you have Kyrie Irving. If you always have, you have your big three, even if you lose one. If you lose two of them, you're still looking at a situation where, let's say, LeBron and Kyrie Irving has to carry the load. Also, when you're talking about load management, which is actually a big part of basketball now. It may be an ugly part of basketball. A lot of people do not like load management, but it is an important part of basketball. Being able to have, when you have four stars on the court, it gives you a chance to rest your guys. One of the big problems that LeBron James had in Cleveland was the minute he came off the court, they would lose a lead. And then LeBron would have to only take like a minute, 2 minutes rest before he would have to come out. As LeBron James gets older, load management is going to be an important part of managing him. And when you have four stars, four guys that are four all-stars, then you have a situation where you can take LeBron out in parts of the second quarter and rest him. Give him a long breather in that third quarter so that he can come in the fourth rested. You can have Anthony Davis resting in that second and third quarter. When you have a team like that, you can split them up and you can maintain a lead, if not even expand the league. When you look around and you can go big, you can go small. If LeBron takes a day off or Anthony Davis takes a day off, that's no longer a automatic win for the opponent. Last year when you watched the Lakers, when LeBron went out with a groin injury, the Lakers had the fourth best record in the NBA. They were only, I believe, like 2 or 3 games from having the best, being the number one team in the NBA. LeBron went out, that team fell apart. He didn't go out for the whole season. He just went out for, I think it was 12 weeks. Oh, no, it wasn't even 12 weeks. It was, I forget how long it was, but he was out and the Lakers fell apart. Now, you have a situation when you have 4 stars, if you are able to get the Kawhi Leonards, if you're able to get the Kyrie Irving, if you're able to get the D'Angelo Russell, if LeBron goes down, you still would have Kyrie, Kyle Kuzma, Anthony Davis. That's a championship team to itself. If So it gives you the flexibility. And then when you start thinking about other pieces, I'm telling you, do not be shocked when Carmelo Anthony ends up on the Lakers. Carmelo Anthony is a guy who may not have fit well at OKC. He didn't fit well in Houston. Only played 9 or 10 games last year. But the one team that he fits in really well at would be the Los Angeles Lakers. His style of ball, the ISO ball, where Carmelo kind of plays his best, would be perfect for a time when you got your big four, they're resting. You roll out while LeBron and Kyrie or whomever they bring in is on the bench. You have Carmelo who can actually get you a quick little, give your guys a breather, but Carmelo can maintain the lead or maintain their position. If they're down, they're not gonna, when LeBron and Anthony Davis and Kyle Kuzma comes back, it's not a situation where you were down by 2 when you went to rest, but now you're down by 15. He fits in perfect with the Lakers. Do not be shocked if one of the moves that the Lakers make this offseason will be Carmelo Anthony. So with that, I'm going to take a quick break, and we will be right back.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, we're back. And the last segment, we just got done talking about the Los Angeles Lakers freeing up cap space. So now they have the ability to go out and sign a max player. Their priority is Kawhi Leonard, Kyrie Irving. The third option is D'Angelo Russell. And the fourth option is for them to break up that $32 million and get 2 or 3 solid pieces that fit in well with their current big three of Kuzma, Anthony Davis, and LeBron James. And I think it's very important to bring up they already have a big three. People do not realize how Kyle Kuzma is such a solid player who has come on incredibly strong. He's improving year after year. And I think he works in really well with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So he is definitely a factor in this. The Lakers already have a big three. That's the one thing that a lot of people are skipping over. The fact that now they have the room to go out and get a big four makes them so much more dangerous because it gives them the opportunity to rest. And then I also brought up the fact that the Lakers, in my opinion, will and should go out and get Carmelo Anthony. Now, we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about the Golden State Warriors and Kevin Durant. So, Kevin Durant opted out of his $31.5 million option to stay with the Golden State Warriors, and he is now officially a free agent. And what does that mean? He has a lot of options. He has a lot of suitors. As everyone has been talking about, the New York Knicks is a major suitor for Kevin Durant. The Brooklyn Nets are another suitor. Golden State as the third, and then the Clippers as well. Now, when I think about this, it was a no-brainer for him to opt out of the $31 million. I don't know why people were so shocked that he was going to opt out of the $31 million. He's coming off of a blown Achilles. He's in major demand. He's not playing next year, so he needs to secure his future now. And holding and taking that $31 million option just would not have been smart. As far as the Warriors go, from all reports, the Warriors have two plans in place. Plan A, the Warriors plan to offer Kevin Durant the max. They're not going to play around. They're offering Clay the max, and they're offering Kevin Durant the max with intentions on signing them both. And if they sign both of those guys, next year may be a rough year, but do not count them out. A lot of people are pretty much wiping Golden State off the landscape of championship contending teams. They will still have the Splash Brothers next year. Most of the season, they wouldn't have Clay, but Clay would come back toward midway through the season or the last quarter of the season. At that point, you have Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and that has always been a team to reckon with. People kind of forget that Durant came aboard after they had won and made it to the finals. They won 73 games and then made it to the finals and lost to LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. But that was a championship team who had won the most games in NBA history. That was before Durant was there. So this team is still a threat. Do not listen to anyone that says they're not. So their priority is to sign Clay. Golden State's priority is to sign Clay and to offer Kevin Durant the max and let him rest this year, heal up, and come back the next year, the following season. Their option 2 is they still plan on offering Kevin Durant the max, but even if he decides that he does not want to stay and he wants to go to Brooklyn or he wants to go to New York, that they're willing to offer a sign and trade where they give him the full 5-year max and he still goes to New York or Brooklyn or the Clippers. The benefit to the Warriors is this: they would get some quality players to get a little bit younger, to fill out their depth on their team and their bench, or they get a trade exception later, which then clears up some cap space and gives them some more flexibility on what they can do with their team. So it's a smart move. Kevin Durant has to take, and the thing about it is he has to take one of those two options. It would be crazy for him to turn down either one of those. Those are the only two options, if I'm Kevin Durant, I'm even considering. And let's say I want to go to the Knicks. The Knicks is my final choice. It would be in his best interest to go to Golden State and say, sorry guys, I'm going to the Knicks. They work out that sign and trade. He goes to the Knicks. It's 5 years max deal where you're looking at a situation where instead of it being 4 years, one of those years is a rehab year. He will not play next season at all. 0 games. So if you have the option to have signing him for 5 years, you got 1 year that's a red shirt year, but you still have him for 4 years that he can play. Every team's going to take that option. The Knicks and the Brooklyn Nets are both going to take that option. It's in his best interest. I know that people have talked about bringing Durant on to the Clippers. Also, there's been brought up with the Lakers as well. But right now, from everything I'm seeing and hearing, I don't think that's really an option. I feel from everything that I'm hearing, he is not considering the Clippers. He's not really considering the Lakers. He's just considering Golden State, Brooklyn, and New York. Kyrie Irving is the one who is in kind of a holding pattern because Kyrie has to decide, does he want to go play with LeBron or does he want to follow Kevin Durant? Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving have a great relationship. I think Kyrie is going to wait until he finds out where Kevin Durant goes. If Kevin Durant stays in Golden State, then I think Kyrie Irving is going to go to the Los Angeles Lakers. I think his heart wants to go to Brooklyn, but he cannot go to Brooklyn by himself. And so if Durant stays in Golden State, then I think Kyrie goes to the Lakers. If Kyrie goes to the Nets, then I think Kyrie goes to the Nets. I think that Kevin Durant is the key to what happens with Kyrie Irving. Now, when you look at the Golden State Warriors and you say, as I've mentioned, life without Kevin Durant, then I also think the Golden State Warriors should try very hard to bring back DeMarcus Cousins. And it also makes Draymond Green a priority. But if Klay gets a max and Kevin Durant decides to stay, then I would not be shocked to see DeMarcus Cousins leave, and it definitely puts Draymond Green's future in Golden State in jeopardy. Because you cannot I just don't think Golden State would have the money next year to sign a max Klay, a max KD, a max Steph Curry, and then Draymond, who wants a max deal as well. I don't think Golden State it makes it so that Draymond would be in big trouble next year when he becomes a free agent. So, with that, we're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some other things that are going on in the NBA, talking about the Dallas Mavericks and the Boston Celtics. We'll be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to Extreme Cage Fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, we're back. And in the last segment, we were talking about Kevin Durant opting out of his Golden State Warrior contract and becoming a free agent, which was no surprise, and the possibility of him going to New York or Brooklyn, and how I personally think the best option is to take one of the two options that Golden State has given him. Either re-sign with Golden State for 5 years, or re-sign with Golden State and get a sign and trade, but he would still get 5 years because he needs that extra year because he's going to be doing rehab. Speaking of rehab, a franchise is trying to do some rehab right now. The Houston Rockets are trying to rehab their lineup. And what they're trying to do, what their plan is they want to go after Jimmy Butler. The problem is they have absolutely, positively no cap space. So they've come up with this ingenious plan. And their ingenious plan is, we're going to try to talk Jimmy Butler into going to the Philadelphia 76ers and forcing a sign and trade. Now, when I look at this, this is great. This is a great plan in theory. They get an all-star player, which then creates them their big three, which would be Harden, Chris Paul, and Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler gets what he wants, which is a max deal. The problem that I see is Jimmy Butler wants a max deal, and with the Lakers clearing up cap space, if the Lakers do not get Kawhi Leonard or Kyrie Irving or D'Angelo Russell, do not be surprised if the Lakers don't go after a Jimmy Butler as well. Now, when you're looking at the Rockets are even trying to work out a separate deal where they're trying to get rid of or trade away some of their assets, like Clint Capella. He's 25. He has a 4-year contract, $72 million. Clint Capella is a very, very valuable player. He has increased his scoring and his rebounding every year he's been in the league. He's worth every penny. And that would be a big loss for them. Eric Gordon, former Sixth Man of the Year, he has 1 year left on his contract, $14 million. And PJ Tucker, 34, he has 2 years on his contract. The last year is a team option. He has $16 million. So the Houston Rockets are trying to get rid of Clint Capella, Eric Gordon, and PJ Tucker to make room for Jimmy Butler. They think they have a really good shot at doing this. And when you think about it, it sounds great on paper. They get Jimmy Butler. But the 76ers, there's no reason for the 76ers to take this offer, to be bullied into doing a sign and trade for Jimmy Butler. Here's your options. Option one is the 76ers offer Jimmy Butler the max, which Jimmy Butler, I think, would take. Option two is Jimmy Butler says, either sign and trade me or I'm going somewhere else. Well, that's somewhere else. You can't threaten to say either sign me or I'm going to Houston, or sign and trade me and I'm going to Houston. Houston doesn't have any money. They have no cap space. If the 76ers just say no, then Jimmy Butler cannot go to the Houston Rockets. So it kind of seems more pie in the sky. I don't see why the 76ers would do this option. I know that the Houston Rockets have always been willing to take a risk and think outside the box, and I think this is one of those cases. But now, let's look at this trade. Let's look at this sign and trade option. Let's say the Houston Rockets get exactly what they want. You ever hear this saying, be careful what you wish for? Be careful what you ask for? Because this is that scenario. You have Mr. Passive-Aggressive James Harden. You have Mr. In-Your-Face Chris Paul. And then you have Jimmy Butler, who has had run-ins at every organization he's played. Jimmy Butler is the kind of guy that will tell you, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Why should I listen to you? Now, you have a situation when James Harden is scoring 40 points, taking every shot, dribble everywhere, and Jimmy Butler's not getting the ball, and Chris Paul's not getting the ball. They're already on, Chris Paul and James Harden are already on odds. What happens when Chris Paul is upset? What happens when Chris Paul and Jimmy Butler are upset? Then they take it out on James Harden. James Harden gets upset. This is a disaster. This would be an accident just waiting to happen. This would be, it sounds great on paper. What the Houston Rockets need to do, in my opinion, 2 years ago, they were really just one injury away from making the finals. This year, they were still one of the best teams in basketball. And with the Warriors being down, they could be a serious contender for an NBA championship. But when you look at a new team, minus Clint Capella, minus Eric Gordon, minus PJ Tucker, and you look around and you say the Rockets, last year, their bench had the lowest minutes in the NBA. They had the lowest points in the NBA. Their bench had the lowest rebounds in the NBA. They had the lowest assists in the NBA. They were the worst bench in the NBA. They had a great, they had a very successful starting lineup, but their bench was downright wretched. It was horrible. And you're going to gut this team even further and get rid of Clint Capella, your up-and-coming potential star, Eric Gordon, and PJ Tucker, to become even less deep. It's a bad move, in my opinion. I do not think it is smart for the Houston Rockets. I understand they're going forward, and I understand that there are other players out there that they could fill their bench up with. But the last 2 years, when you look at the Houston Rockets, they have not proven that they can develop a bench to make themselves deep enough to contend. I say last year and this year, if they would have had a bench, they would have been one of the favorites to make it to the finals. I think they would have beaten this Warriors team. This Warriors team was beat up and run down, but they did not have a cohesive unit. You had a situation where Chris Paul wasn't happy. You had a situation whenever the offense ran through Chris Paul, James Harden shut down. No bench play. They just weren't prepared to win a championship. And by getting rid of some of your players and making your bench even more shallow, it doesn't make them better. Okay, now you look around and you say Chris Paul, who a lot of people think has slid. James Harden, who has a style of basketball that is great for the regular season. It racks up a lot of stats. But when you have a time for playoffs, when you can prepare for that and you're preparing for one team, his style does not work. You have Jimmy Butler, who can be very abrasive. So you have those three, and I don't know who else they would have on their team. Do you think that three, playoff-wise, could match up with a Kyle Kuzma, LeBron James, and an Anthony Davis? I say absolutely not. Matter of fact, I look at those guys and I say, okay, you run into the Warriors again. You have your three. I would still take Clay coming off of injury, Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Iguodala, and whomever else they bring in. I would still take Golden State. I would still take Portland. I would still take Denver. They're just not deep enough. I think it would really hurt them, and their chemistry, I think, would be a disaster. There's no way I'm doing this, but they are trying to desperately put together or force a sign and trade in which Jimmy Butler would become a Houston Rockets. Very interested in seeing how that goes. Now, when we come back, we teased this earlier. We're gonna talk about the Dallas Mavericks. We're gonna talk about some of the other free agent moves, and then I'm going to tell you why this NBA offseason could easily be a big, giant disappointment. Stay tuned, and we'll be back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, we're back. In the last segment, we were talking about the Houston Rockets and how they have a plan to get Jimmy Butler. And their plan is to go and force a sign and trade with the Philadelphia 76ers, in which Jimmy Butler tell them, either sign me and trade me or I'm leaving. And I don't see how that really benefits the Houston Rockets, because the 76ers could just say, go ahead and leave. But from everything I understand, the 76ers plan on offering Jimmy Butler the max. And so that's mainly what Jimmy Butler wants in the first place. So I don't see how this is going to work. And if it did work, how do they plan on controlling those egos where Chris Paul, who's already not happy with James Harden's style, and then you have Jimmy Butler? I think it's a recipe for an explosive situation, a disaster. Also, I'm going to switch gears a little bit and bring up the fact that Marc Gasol of the Toronto Raptors, he had a player's option for this season coming up for $25.6 million, and he decided to take that option, and he is returning to the Raptors, which means the only piece that's really missing from the championship team is Kawhi Leonard. And will Kawhi Leonard actually leave, or will he stay? I personally think having a situation where you have an entire country that loves you. You will still be a superstar in the United States. You're the greatest Raptor to ever play. You're the only man to ever bring a championship, an NBA championship, to Canada. Your legacy is set. I would tell him, I think it's a good move. You have your whole team. Kawhi Leonard would have his whole team back from the Raptors back, which has already given them a championship. I think it's a good move to come back. So that's one that I wanted to make sure. But the next thing I'm going to talk about is the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics, who has just had a horrible, horrible offseason. When you look at the Celtics and you're thinking about what has transpired with them, losing so many of their top players. They lost Maurice Morris. They lost Terry Rozier. They lost Al Horford. And they lost Kyrie Irving. They were not expecting to lose these guys. It is the team, their depth, their veteran leadership has all kind of abandoned them. And so how do they come back for the loss of Kyrie Irving? It turns out that the Celtics plan on making a move for Kemba Walker. Now, when you look at the Celtics have $25 million available. So they're going to, I think they'll put that whole $25 million available to Kemba Walker. I do not. When it comes to Kemba Walker, I'm a little confused. He's a star. He played incredibly well with the Charlotte Hornets, but for some reason, the Hornets have no interest in giving him the max. He's a Charlotte. He's a Carolina native. It's a perfect fit. If there's anyone that you're gonna, if you're the Charlotte Hornets and you're Michael Jordan, the owner of the Charlotte Hornets, if there's anyone that you should give a max deal to, it's Kemba Walker. The hometown guy makes good. If you plan on signing any major free agents in the future, it is important that you take care of your hometown guy. Because right now, from everything I'm hearing, they have no interest in offering that max. And I think that shuts the Charlotte Hornets down for the next 10 years. Because if you're a young guy and you have an up-and-coming career and you were signed by the Charlotte Hornets, you already know that they are not loyal and that they do not want to pay. And if you're an NBA player, you do not want to be on a cheap franchise, because in order to win a championship, you need 1, 2, 3, 4 max players. And the Charlotte keep wanting to call them the Bobcats. The Charlotte Hornets are showing they don't even want to pay for 1 max player. So they're going to let their all-star homegrown product leave because they have no interest in offering the max. They're willing to sign him, but for less than the max. That's a recipe for disaster. It really makes Michael Jordan possibly the worst owner in the NBA. Everyone talks about Dolan. Dolan is willing to spend money. He just spends money in the wrong places. He makes bad decisions. Michael Jordan and the Charlotte Hornets, they just seem poorly ran and cheap. And they make bad decisions. They don't want to spend money. That's a recipe for disaster, because if you're a free agent, like I said, you're not going to want to. Charlotte is not a destination for anyone. If you're a young rookie up and coming star, you want out of there. If you're Kyrie Irving, Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Durant, no one brings up going to Charlotte. No one even like, oh, maybe I'd consider a meeting with them. No one wants to talk to them. And now they're about to lose Kemba Walker. Kemba has been linked to the Lakers. The Celtics are now the front runner. The Knicks, the Nets. And I think it's a good move. You take that young core and you bring in a Kemba, which I think would work way better than a Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving came in with the premise of, this is going to be my team. I'm going to be the LeBron James of the Celtics. And you had a young team who looked around and said, hey, we just made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. This is our team. It's not your team. And personalities just rubbed wrong. Kyrie and Kemba are pretty close to the same player. Kyrie has a lot more skill, but they're close. 1A, 1B. They're very close. And if you can if you're going to lose Kyrie, but be able to have a situation where you're able to have a guy that has all the Kyrie skills, but not the chemistry issues that really blew that team up. You have a Gordon Hayward who is going to be, he's coming off of last season he played, but he was still getting used to coming off of that injury. The injury he had, it takes 2 years. This is now 2 years. Gordon Hayward will be a much improved player. Kemba Walker, I think, would be a much better fit than Kyrie Irving because of the chemistry issue. Kyrie's gone. I think there'll be a much better team. The problem with the Celtics is the fact that in this holding pattern of a season last year, that they took a step back, like I said, losing Morris, Al Horford, Rozier, and Kyrie Irving makes them not as strong as they once were. And then you look around at Toronto, if Kawhi comes back, the 76ers. You look at Milwaukee. Indiana's going to be better. The Celtics are just, I look at them as a middle-of-the-road team. No matter what move they make, they're just going to be a middle-of-the-road team. I think a player that they should go for is maybe DeMarcus Cousins. They need more size. Kemba's a very small guard, but they definitely need more size. They need a center. They need to make sure they have a solid power forward, just in case Gordon Hayward doesn't pull out, doesn't come back and as strong as he used to be. There's a lot of moves, but I look at the Celtics, no matter what move they make, they are solidly set in the middle of the pack. Not good enough to win a championship, not good enough to not make the playoffs, and also run. That's kind of where I see them. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about here is there's talk. The NBA and the owners had a meeting and was talking about shortening the 2021. It means starting shorten the NBA season starting in 2021, which sounds great. I feel like the NBA season is way too long. You have a situation where teams are resting players because of the fact that the season is so long. And the possibility of shortening the season, they also brought up the fact that there's a possibility that they would stop the season and have like a mid-season cup where they would have like a mid-season tournament to win this mid-season cup, which doesn't really excite me, doesn't even sound right. it's more after a kind of a soccer model where they break off midseason and have like a midseason cup. I just don't see that as something that would really strike interest. Maybe the first year or two, kind of a novelty item, but I'm not really that excited about a midseason cup. Then they also talked about possibly having a situation where they have, at the end of the season, they have a play-in tournament where they take the teams and they all play to see who gets into the playoffs. What's wrong with... I kind of like it the way it is. Yes, it's too long. I'm all for shortening the season. But, man, I don't like these options. I'm not excited about a midseason cup. Maybe the play-in would be okay. But I feel like with the NBA, half the teams make the playoffs as it is. So, you know, adding more playoff games and trying to create a play-in tournament, I'm not excited about that. I'm not excited about any of these moves. Maybe you are that are listening. I would love to hear what you guys think. You can send me a message on Twitter on that one. But I just don't think they're making... these changes don't really get me fired up. So we're going to take another break. When we come back, I'm going to talk about how we could be looking at, with all this excitement about this offseason of the NBA, could we all be set up for a big, giant disappointment? Stay tuned. We'll be back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right, we're back, and we were just talking about how the Celtics are targeting Kemba Walker to replace Kyrie Irving on their roster. The Celtics has had quite a few losses this offseason, losing Morris, Al Horford, Kyrie Irving, and Terry Rozier. And they're hoping to kind of alleviate some of this loss by going after and targeting Kemba Walker, who is a little less talented Kyrie Irving, but maybe a better fit chemistry-wise. We also talked about the NBA considering shortening the NBA season and putting in a mid-season cup and a play-in type series where teams get to play into the playoffs. I'm not excited about any of it. Some people are. Now we're going to move on. After this segment, we're going to talk a quick bit about the Dallas Mavericks and the New York Knicks. And then I'm going to tell you why it is a strong possibility that this NBA offseason could be a big dud. And before we get there, the Dallas Mavericks have made it known that they are going to offer Kristaps Porzingis the max. And that was an important factor because I knew that Dallas had his rights, but he was a restricted free agent. But I hadn't heard anything about Porzingis. And I'm saying, listen, Porzingis, the unicorn, is a very viable asset, but no one's talking about him. Well, it turns out that the Mavericks are actually going to offer the max. This is, I think, personally a no-brainer, which then puts the Dallas Mavericks right in the thick of things. But it makes me think, when you look at the New York Knicks, and they have this super, super talented player in Kristaps Porzingis, and they trade him away under his rookie deal because they didn't manage him properly. And they trade him away to create space because they're going to sign Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Well, now it looks like they're not going to get Kyrie Irving, they're not going to get Kevin Durant, and now they're looking at a possibility of going after DeMarcus Cousins as a second option, so that they don't look like they've completely lost everything. The Knicks are just ran poorly. You don't get rid of a Kristaps Porzingis for anything. When you have a young guy, 7'3", has handles, can shoot, can play defense, he does it all. Yes, he has been injured, but is part of the injury why he's been out so long is because, one, he hasn't been happy in New York. It was New York's only job is to make that guy happy. And in the end, he wanted to leave. He did not want to be there. And it wasn't because of the losing. It was their medical staff. There was so many things that made Porzingis not want to be in New York and eventually get traded away. And when you look around and you look at all the free agencies that they're looking at, everyone's looking at Brooklyn as the new New York team. When you say the Knicks haven't won a championship in 50 years, 50, they only have 2 championships. If you have a situation where, let's say, Durant and Kyrie, or Durant and Kawhi, or somehow they manage to get 2 superstars in Brooklyn and they run off a couple of championships, 1 or 2 or 3 championships, the city of New York is going to shift. Brooklyn, which is a very sexy borough in New York, is going to be the toast of the city. They can take the city. It's not like the Clippers and the Lakers, where Los Angeles will always be a Laker town. The Clippers can close the gap, but I don't care if the Clippers three-peat it. It's still going to be Lakerland. But when you look around in New York, they want basketball. They're starving for basketball. And in most people's lives, either they haven't won since the early 70s. It's been almost 50 years. Brooklyn can go in and steal them because of poor management, like with Kristaps Porzingis. You can't let a guy like that go and get nothing really for him. Just a bad decision. Now, with the fact that Porzingis is being offered the max by the Dallas Mavericks, it brings up a fact that I have been looking at. And I'm going to tell you why I think this NBA offseason could come in and everyone's all excited about it, and that's all you've been hearing for the last 2-3 weeks, is Where's Durant going to go? Where's Kawhi going to go? Where's Kyrie going to go? Where's Kemba going to go? Well, if Porzingis is signing with Dallas, so he's staying put, you look around and you say, really, the best place for Kawhi Leonard with his personality is Toronto. Toronto's proven that they can work with his medical staff. They can do load management. He has a great relationship with the front office. He gets an extra year. Let's say Kawhi stays in Toronto. Kevin Durant with a blown out Achilles, it's better for him to get that extra year, rehab a year, and come back to Golden State and play 4 years at Golden State. Let's say Kyrie Irving goes to the Knicks or the Nets. If Kyrie goes to the Knicks or the Nets by themselves, that's just not sexy. It's just not interesting. And they're still not a playoff team. Klay Thompson, it's already set in stone. Unless they don't offer him the max, he's staying in Golden State. Kemba Walker, Kemba wants to stay in Charlotte. Does Michael Jordan open his eyes and get smart and offer him the max? Because he should. And if he does, Kemba's staying. You look at Tobias Harris and Jimmy Butler. Philadelphia, from everything I'm hearing, is planning on staying right with those two guys. So if you have Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris staying right where they're at, and that would mean if Kyrie went to the Knicks, then D'Angelo Russell would most likely have to stay in Brooklyn. You have a situation where none of the major free agents leave. And all of that is very, very feasible. And all this talk about where all these great free agents would go, they would go nowhere. And this is not a far-fetched scenario. This is the most realistic. Like I said, Kawhi should stay in Toronto. Kevin Durant, because of his injury, he should stay in Golden State. Klay Thompson, no-brainer. He's staying in Golden State. Kemba Walker wants to stay in Charlotte, just wants to be appreciated and wants to be paid. Michael Jordan should pay him. Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris, the 76ers want to re-sign both of them, and they want to make a run at a championship. That should happen. If I was a betting man, I would bet on this scenario than all the crazy options that you are hearing on television and on the radio. With that, I just wanted to give you some food for thought. You've been listening to the GSMC Podcast Network, and to all, have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.